Hello there and welcome. It's Psychic Cynthia here, Spiritual Psychic Cynthia Killian. And welcome. Today I'm logging on to talk with you about the runes, one of my favorite subjects. And this is for those of you who do your own rune readings, even just for yourself and maybe for others. I wanted to share with you a new insight or evolution into my rune reading practice and really something that might help you. So real quick, what I've been noticing lately is I've been noticing that when I do readings for myself and maybe clients too, but especially I've been noticing it in my own personal readings, that when I lay out runes, so let's say when I'm drawing runes from a bag, so this isn't relating to casting when you throw them out, but when I'm drawing them out one by one in a multi-rune spread, say in a rune spread that has 4 runes, for example, or it could be 5 or 6. So when I do these readings for myself, I'm noticing that, well, first of all, I'm noticing that when I lay them out, some of them are face down. In other words, you can't see the rune yet. And then some of them are face up. And I noticed that from the beginning. Probably you've noticed that too when you lay the runes out. Some of them you see them when you lay them out and some of them you don't. And then you just flip them over, right? But what I'm noticing is sometimes I'm getting these multi-rune reading spreads where a lot of them are face down. Maybe even almost all of them but one. And I'm noticing that 1 or 2 runes seems to have a lot of significance. And at first I was just like, well, whatever, if the runes are face down, I'll flip them over. And just read them as usual. And I didn't really put a lot of, extra meaning on that or even think about it. But I'm just noticing a pattern over time. And I mean, over like a couple of years, and especially lately, I've been noticing that. So in a moment, I'll show you an example of what I mean here. But I just want to invite you, if that happens to you, if you're doing I would say anything with 3 runes or more, maybe even 2 runes, if you're doing a spread where you're drawing them from the bag and you're putting the runes out and you're noticing that only one of them is face up and all the others are face down. So in other words, you can only see when you first lay them out one of them. I think that you might want to pay attention to that one that is face up, or 2. I mean, it kind of depends on how many runes you're reading with. I mean, if you're reading with, say, just 3 in that spread and 2 are face up and 1 is face down, I would actually reverse what I'm saying here. Okay, does that make sense? So, yeah, I mean, if 2 of 3 are face up but 1 is face down, then that one that's face down is more significant. But in the reading I'm about to show you here that I did for myself earlier today after my yoga practice, there's 4 runes and only 1 came up face up. So let me just flip the camera around here and show you that reading and talk about that for a moment or two so you can really understand what I'm meaning. Here you will see the rune reading spread I did for myself this morning, and this is so you can really see what I'm talking about here. And this is how it came out, how the runes actually came up. And in case you're wondering about the order that I drew them in, this on the top is rune number 1, this is rune number 2, this is rune number 3, this is rune number 4, and this is a 3 Norn spread. That's what I call it. I know there's 4 runes, but that's because this represents the 3 Norns here. If you're not familiar with the term Norns, N as in Nancy, O-R, N again, S. And those are sort of like the Nordic fates. They're different than the Greek fates, but connected. And you'll see a lot of variations of the 3 Norn readings. The top rune here represents the will of the gods. So, each one of these represents a Norns, and you can just think of it as past, present, future, if you'd like. And some people do this reading moving in a different direction. So they go past, present, future. In other words, I read right to left with the runes. Usually, not always. Well, pretty much always. That's just my own personal way of doing it. I know there are others that read right to left too, but there are definitely many who read left to right. I would say at this point in time, more people read left to right on the runes because our modern day rune practice has been influenced by oracle card and tarot card reading. But see, that's exactly why I read my runes right to left, because I also read oracle and tarot cards. When I read those, I'm reading left to right. And I want to be in a different mindset when I'm reading the runes. I want to, tap into a different energy. So it works for me to go right to left. When I move right to left, that's really helping me to tap into a more shamanic-based energy. I don't know if that makes any sense. And I do digress here, but that might be useful for some of you watching this video. And anyway, you can read it either way. And for the purpose of our subject here, it doesn't matter what spread you're using. But, if you're pulling runes out and putting them in a sequence, you do need to know what spread you're using. You need to note while you're doing the reading what order you pulled them in. In other words, you need to remember that this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, you don't need to remember on this reading, but I'm just saying for your own readings. You need to know the order so you can know what position they're in and what that position might signify. Notice I said the word might. Because the runes, well, they don't always respect our human rules. So you might put one down in one particular position, but it could also be talking about something else that's more advanced. But often, if you set the intention that you're going to do this spread and this layout and this area means this, then usually you'll get some sort of results with that. But anyway, so in this reading, one of the things that I look at in all my readings, and I don't know if you are familiar with this aspect of my rune teachings, but I do counsel students and fellow rune readers to look for in your rune readings, and this is applicable when you're doing a multi-rune reading. You want to look for the master or the mother rune. You want to look for the mother rune of the reading or the master rune. And how would I explain this? Well, if you read tarot, it's sort of like finding the significator of the reading. Sort of. It's not exactly the same, but I think it's approximately the same. What I mean by that is one of these runes in this 4-rune reading is going to have more weight or energy. It's sort of the nexus around which all of the runes, will be circulating. And often, I find in this particular spread, which is a really nice, versatile spread that can cover many types of readings, and it doesn't take too long. I have other spreads that I do that are like, I think probably a lot of you do as well, the 9-world spread, and I love the 9-world spread. And then I do basically a Pathfinder 9-world spread that uses all the runes in the entire Foods arc. So love to do the 9-world spread, love to do the larger readings, with more runes, with 9 or 12 or even sometimes all 24. But those readings take a long time to digest and to go over. So generally speaking, I find for my, more frequent use, either doing the daily runes of just 1 rune, sometimes doing a 2-rune reading can be good. And then also 3, 4, and 5. These are really useful numbers of spreads that you can do that you can actually have the time to digest. So and so in these multi-rune readings, one of these runes is going to be, I find, a master or mother rune. This one rune is going to be the nexus around which the reading rotates, and you need to pay a special attention to the rune. It's kind of like the main point, or it's like an umbrella. This is how I would say it. It's like an umbrella that covers the rest of the reading, or like a matrix of energy that pulls everything together into a sense of cohesiveness, a sense of interconnectedness. So, but again, it's the nexus. Everything centers around it. And often in this particular reading spread, the master rune will often be this upper rune, which represents Odin's rune or Freya's rune or the will of the gods, whereas these 3 runes has more to do with the Norns and past, present, future, fate. So often it's the master rune. But here's how I laid this reading out, just straight from the bag. And, I mean, look at it. Look at it. I mean, what do you see here? You see that there's 4 runes, and 3 of them came out of the bag face down, and only 1 came face up. So I think that when only 1 comes face up like this, to me it's obvious that this is the master rune. You know, this is the rune leading the pack, so to speak, leading the reading, you know, saying this is where you need to focus, this is what everything else relates to. And I really think that it doesn't matter what position it's in as much in terms of the master rune. In other words, this is in the past position because remember I'm reading right to left. So, I mean, I guess we could say that, is it the past? Is the past what is the most important thing at this time? Remembering past connections? That's possible, but what I'm noticing so far, and this could change, okay, because my rune reading practice is always evolving. Life is always evolving. My understandings on any aspect of the spiritual psychic realm is always evolving. I've been on this path since childhood, which is a long time ago now for me. And, you know, we're always growing and changing if you're really on the path. So I don't want you to take this as the gospel, but my sense right now is that when you have a situation like this where there's only 1 rune face up, or even 2 in a multi-rune reading, depending on the number of runes, here it's obvious. So there's only 1 rune face up. So I feel that there is a significance. The runes are trying to tell me something special about this, and it has nothing to do with the position of where it's at. In other words, I don't think it matters that much where it fell in the reading, although I might explore that more on my own. But it's the archetype of this rune here, which probably you're familiar with if you read runes already, but maybe you're not as experienced yet. So that would be the Mannaz rune. And that word Mannaz means mind. It means humanity. Well, sometimes it's translated as man, but that's not a gender. It's not the same as male. Man means humanity, humankind. And it has a lot to do with friendships and communities. You know, if you look at it, it's 2 of the Wunyo runes kissing each other is how I always like to think of it. And Wunyo is number 8. It's the last rune in the first row. My kitty is about ready to come in here and help me with this, so we'll see. Maybe she'll leave my runes alone. She likes to play runes. This is Sunana. She's my little rune reader. And you know what's interesting, too, she'd gotten into this reading earlier. I had left it setting out like this on the floor, and she actually carried this rune off a little bit. So I know this rune's really important. Okay, but whatever the rune is, I mean, it could be any rune face up. What I'm saying is it has more importance here because it's faced up. We need to think about how everything else relates to it. And if, just in case you want a peek, because I know some of you are wondering, what are the other runes? Here's what we have here. It's a pretty nice reading, actually. Everything's, you know, upright or doesn't really reverse, and even the ones that don't reverse, you know, are not converse, so that's nice. Converse means sideways. You know, this one could go like this, and this one could go like this, and I prefer to see them upright when possible. I know some people say that the reverses don't matter because the runes don't know duality. To me, I don't think it's a matter of duality. I just think there's an intelligence in the runes, and that they're speaking to us. And if we think in terms of reversals, or if we notice certain patterns, like I'm noticing the pattern, right, of what it means when only 1 rune is face up. I'm asking myself, is there a meaning? So when you start asking those questions, the runes know that because they're intelligent. And remember, the runes, you know, they're not just a divination system, I feel. These are representative of the blueprints for creation, you know, the archetypes of creation, you know, very primal archetypes. So they respond when you get an idea in your mind, and if your idea is that reversals have a meaning or a significance, or like in my mind, you know, reading the Converses, the runes know that. They know that I have a I would say, more sophisticated way of interacting in their language. It's kind of like, I think of the reversals and the converses and all that. It's like knowing adjectives or adverbs. Whereas if you don't read reversals or converses, you only know nouns in a language. And those of you who have studied like a second language will understand what I'm saying, or even if you've only studied English but you've studied it in depth, you'll understand what I'm saying, that it's sometimes the little nuances that can really add depth to a reading. But then again, even if you just read the runes and you don't pay attention to whether they're upright or not, you could actually still just pay attention to these face downs or face up, right? I mean, that's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to just say, there's that one there. I need to pay more attention to that. And then maybe I'll get to these others later. And how do these three relate to that one? If you're curious what I would think on this, and I haven't had time to go over this in depth like I like to. I really like to slow down, digest my rune readings, and think about them. Let's get that a little straighter. Sorry, I'm a little perfectionist, but it doesn't have to be perfect, but I want it to look nice when I look at it. But in terms of what I might have thoughts on this, initial thoughts, how do these three relate to this? Obviously with Laguz, well, maybe not obviously, if you're not familiar, Laguz is day, and often the light that comes after a struggle. So perhaps I've been having struggles with friends. I really don't feel like I've been having fights or anything with friends, but okay, I'm filming this in late May 2021, which we're all, me and my friends and everybody and people I don't even know, we're all struggling with, not struggling, but we're starting to emerge. We struggled a lot in 2020, and there wasn't much community for the past year and a half, actually. So maybe this is saying with the Laguz here in the friendship rune and the humanity, it's saying there's hope for humanity. In fact, the more I look at this, I think this reading is not just for me. I think it's a collective reading. I'm starting to understand that now, so I may have to go do a more in-depth video as to what this means for humanity, because often it works that way for me. And I didn't ask a specific question, so the runes know that I'm willing to be an oracle. They know I'm willing. I will speak truth, and I will speak their truth that they're trying to convey. So what the runes are saying here is that it's time to return back to community, to focus on that joy. They're also addressing the human condition. This rune, Mannaz, I'm trying to think what the number is. It's down in the third row. It's going to be number, just give me 1 second to count it out in my mind. 17, 18. I believe it's number 20. Something like that. It's pretty close to number 20. It's down in the third row. It's right after Ewaz, the one that looks like an M. But this was their letter M. The other one looks like an M, but this was their letter M. There being the ancient Proto-Germanic people, the Nordic, and so on. So this tells me anyway that we're going to be, or that I'm being led and others. It's time to come out in community, but also, we're dealing with the human condition, all the grief and the suffering and the poignancy that's part of humanity. We have great joy and we have great suffering. This is a place of great beauty, but it's also a place of toil, this being the earth plane for humans. So it's relating to that. We have Laguz, which is an emotional cleansing rune, also in the third row. All of you who are rune readers, I'm going to give you a little quiz here. Do you notice anything about these runes that are in this reading in terms of the rune rows? Now, if you're not as experienced with the runes, you won't know the answer to this. But if you know, you're a little bit more experienced even, just a little. So if you're familiar with the 3 rows of 8 runes, each row has 8 out of the 24. What are you noticing about the runes here in this reading? Are you noticing that they're all from the third 8? So whether this reading is just for me, which I don't believe it's just for me, I do believe it's partly for me personally, or it's also for a larger audience that I'm supposed to bring this message for, meaning you're the one watching the video, right? it looks like we're dealing with spiritual energies. We're dealing with those more community-orientated, some might say higher energies, upper chakra energies of the third row. And it really makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, the emotional cleansing that we're going through. And it might still be on a subconscious level. Maybe it has meaning that this was turned over, or I think it's like in the background, that cleansing. Here's the thing I just want to say on this. The thing I want to say on this about that Laguz rune there in the emotional cleansing is that for this time that we're in and that we've just been through, our whole world, our whole community, and it doesn't matter where you live. I know most people watching my videos now are in the U.S., but not all. So wherever you live, we've been through a trauma collectively. And regardless of what your positions are about, the recent, pandemic last year, or just various things that have been done, regulations and all that, regardless of what your positions are or how you feel about that, whether you support them or not, I mean, there is a shared emotional experience for many of having been through trauma. And different people were set off by different aspects of it. I mean, some people felt strongly that their freedoms were impinged upon. Others were more concerned about, dying, okay? Some still are, okay? Maybe some were mourning. I mean, it just seems that wherever you're, you can have opinions, okay? I'm not talking about opinions. I'm talking about feelings. I'm talking about the heart chakra, the heart center, and that's what Laguz indicates. So maybe this reading is indicating we heal that through community. Okay, I'm not going to go over this reading entirely in depth in this video. I think I'll do a separate video for that if I wish to. But I felt led to say that. So maybe somebody here watching this video needs to understand. You might need to understand that, I think there's a few people maybe that were untouched by it emotionally, but I do believe, I observe that most of us are carrying emotional trauma from what happened, and it's going to take a long time probably to heal from that. And so we all need to be addressing our inner emotional healing. That's so important right now because, it's like I was saying to a friend the other day, and I've always worked in this realm of emotional healing, and especially, my path with that is, and there's many paths to that. The runes help with that because they're empowering. So I can utilize the runes to help with that. But a lot of my healing work with that personally has been done with affirmations and reprogramming the mind. And then with nature and with the use of herbalism and especially flower essences and working with the flowers themselves, being in nature, being around flowers, growing flowers. This has been very healing for me emotionally and for my clients that I've introduced to this. So even if, somebody like me who's been doing this work, a comment I made is that before 2020, most of us already had traumas we were carrying, and we had unresolved traumas from childhood, right? Or from what happened last year or the month before, what happened, with a former spouse, or what happened at our last job or your last client. It's just so easy to accumulate traumas. But then you have something like this happen. You have 2020 happen in the worldwide pandemic, and then also the fear that's generated around that, and the uncertainty, and people fighting about, what you should do and shouldn't do. And, it's really just humans, we're stupid sometimes. I hate to use that word. We're very unwise, okay? We divide at the very moment when we should stay together. We detach from love and understanding at the very moment when we need that the most. So there's been a lot of that. I know there's been a lot of families break up, at least in the United States. I don't know. I don't live anywhere else, okay? But I get the feeling that this division is strong, on a lot of levels. And what I'm talking about here isn't just like the political division or anything. I'm talking about the heart and how families and communities have been hurt by this. So, but here's the thing that I've learned in my healing work as a psychic and a psychic herbalist, working in the emotional healing realm. You actually can't heal a community. I've tried, believe me. I've tried several. I thought, I could heal this community or this. I can't heal it. Even somebody like me with more experience in these realms, we can't heal it all by ourselves, is what I'm saying. The best way to heal a community, like this Mannaz rune is talking about community, is to do our own healing. And then we can heal community that way, sort of indirectly. It's interesting. As we do our own healing, then we do uplift our communities and we uplift everybody around us. But when we're in when we're in brokenness, when we're still struggling so much and we don't have our stuff any bit together, and we are, in other words, when we have so many traumas, unresolved traumas, unresolved emotional issues, unresolved loose ends, energies, psychic energies, like things in our aura. When we have so much of that, we can't really help uplift anybody. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. Okay, I won't say nobody, because here's the other thing, too, to remember. You don't have to be perfect. And I think if you're just an average person who is, well, you're not average, okay? If you're watching this, you are exceptional, dear one. You are extraordinary, and I hope you will own that. What a beautiful soul you are. But let's say if you are just a medium person on this path, if you are, I don't want to say average because you're more than that, but, if you are making a modest effort, okay, that's what I'm saying. If you are on the spiritual psychic path or the runic reading path or, whatever kind of path of higher consciousness, if you're on a path of consciousness, of awakening, and you're making any kind of effort to self-heal, which we need to get back to making that effort, okay? Maybe somebody needs to hear that message, okay? Maybe, the events of the last year, we got ourselves so wrapped up in them that we forgot to keep taking care of our own past, and our own projects. I'm talking about soul projects, really, your own path, your own destiny. So it's time to get back to that. And if you're giving attention to that and you're giving attention to your healing and addressing what you need for that soul healing and physical healing, if that's part of it too, well, you can be an inspiration to somebody else. So you don't have to be perfect. Please don't hear it that way. But do hear that if we want to help heal our communities, and it's needed. It's needed because the trauma is collective. It is spread out everywhere. And, the trauma in the world has just increased. It hasn't decreased any. Now, maybe some aspects, maybe, some people are less traumatized in a way because they had crappy jobs and then they got to go home and not work at those jobs. Jobs, when I say crappy, I mean, it might be a dream job for somebody else, but for them it wasn't a good fit. So I think in that way there could have been some liberation, but there's still traumas and we still need to heal that. And I don't know what your unique trauma is. I mean, I think we all process this differently, so it's hard to say what exactly the traumas are. If I were to say one, I believe that fear has been triggered. And so fear is a very unconscious reaction that it can serve you. I mean, if fear informs you, if fear brings something to your attention that you need to do something differently, that's good. But the problem is, a lot of times when fear gets triggered, we just stay in a fear state, which is an unconscious state. It's instinctual, instead of moving into more of a higher mind state or even a logical state. Either one of those states are more productive than a fear state. So work around your fears if you're not sure how you need to do this cleansing for moving back into community and experiencing friendship and connection again. Alrighty, well, this is a wrap for today. I'm sorry this went on a lot longer than I thought. I may have to edit this down, but this is a wrap for today. And I thank you for watching, and I hope you found something useful here for your own rune reading practice or just for your own path of higher spiritual psychic awakening. Until next time, bright blessings. and rune blessings. May the powers of the runes themselves watch over you and guide you on your most perfect life's journey. Blessings.